Hello and welcome. Today it's very snowy outside, so we are going to discuss on this snowy day about portfolio risk and return. So, what is a portfolio? So, portfolio is something that is it's a combination of two or more assets. So, there are two aspects of portfolio we are going to discuss today in this short video. One is portfolio risk, portfolio return to start with, and next is the portfolio risk. Okay, now portfolio return is composed of two factors: weight of respective assets. So let's say we are composing of we are composing a portfolio out of two assets. One asset is A, let's say in our case it is equity, and asset B, in this case it is treasury for this example. So we are composing a portfolio out of two assets A and B. So what will be portfolio's return? Let us denote it by return of portfolio AB. Okay. So return of portfolio AB will be dependent on weight of asset A, weight of asset B. So how much you allocate to equity, how much you allocate to treasury, then return of asset A and return of asset B. So it is composed of two factors, weight as well as returns. Example, let's say we are creating a portfolio which has 100% equity and 0% treasury. Return on equity is, let's say in our case, 9%, and treasury gives us around 3%. Okay, versus we are creating another portfolio that has 50% of equity, 50% of treasury. Okay, returns from equity is, let's say, 9% in this case and 3% in this case, and we are creating a portfolio C, or third portfolio, that is 0% equity as well as 100% 0% equity and 100% treasury. In this case also equity returns are 9% and treasury returns are 3%. So which portfolio will give you the highest return? So portfolio which has 100% allocations towards equity will give you highest returns. So returns of a portfolio depend on two factors: weight of respective assets as well as returns given by those respective assets. Now portfolio risk is denoted by standard deviation of portfolio. So standard deviation AB, that is portfolio risk AB, is dependent on three major factors: weights of respective assets, so weight of A, weight of B, then standard deviations or risk of respective assets, so standard deviation A, standard deviation B, and correlation between those assets. Correlation is how these assets move together. So do they move in same directions or do they move in counter directions? So correlations of asset, correlations between A and B. So portfolio risk depends on three factors: weight of respective assets, standard deviation of respective assets, and correlation of respective assets. So if you allocate more towards risky assets, the risk of portfolio goes up. If you take risk more on your assets, more on your respective assets, that is the standard deviation of respective assets goes up, your risk goes up. Now this is important to understand. If you include assets that move in same direction, so if one asset is going up, the other asset is going also up, so it doesn't reduce the portfolio risk. But if you include assets that don't move in same direction, either they are not correlated at all or they're correlated in a negative sense, so if one asset goes up, the other asset goes down, then you can reduce portfolio risk. I'll give you an example for that. So let us say there is a person named as Harry, and there is a person named as Catherine. So Harry is investing his entire money into two assets, equity and let's say long-term debt. Okay, so he puts 50% in equity and 50% in long-term debt, while Catherine is investing in equity but she's investing in gold. Okay, so she's putting 50% of her money in equity and 50% of her money in gold. So if there is bullish run in the economy, if the economy is doing well, both these assets do well. Okay, so equity is moving up, so assuming that these two have positive correlations and these two have negative correlation. So if equity goes up, long term debt also goes up, but if equity goes down, long term debt also goes down. So is there any benefit of adding long term debt to your asset mix of equity? Answer is maybe not, because they are positively correlated. But if you add in assets that have negative correlation, so if equity goes up, gold is relatively stable, but if equity goes down, gold goes up. So when the economy turns bad and the equity markets are sliding, then gold is giving you returns. So effectively, you're reducing your risk. So risk of a portfolio depends on the weight, the allocation towards the respective assets. It depends on risk of the respective assets, standard deviations of those respective assets, and it also depends on correlation. So benefit of risk reduction is achieved when you add assets that are either negatively correlated or they have zero correlation. So they are either negatively correlated, they have zero correlation, or when they have positive correlation, it doesn't reduce any risk. Okay, so just to recap, return on an asset depends on two factors: weight of asset A and return of asset A, weight of asset B and return of asset B. So it depends on returns given by the respective assets and weight of those assets. Portfolio risk is dependent on three factors: weight of assets, the risk of assets, and correlations between those assets. If correlations are negative or they are zero, there is significant reduction in risk. If correlations are positive, then there is no risk reduction due to adding of any asset. So thank you for this short lecture. In the next lecture, we are going to discuss how to see risk and portfolio, risk and return together, and how to calculate risk and return of a portfolio.